Welcome to this session. My name is Barbara Wochalia. So we are continuing with monopoly, and we had looked at perfect competition, and then we had looked at monopoly, the first part of monopoly, and we saw that monopoly is a market structure characterized with a single seller of a product or commodity that does not have a close substitute. And we saw that we can have two types of monopolists, a single priced monopolist and a price discriminating monopolist. So for a single priced monopolist, he or she will be charging one price for each for the commodity. But then for a price discriminating monopolist, we saw that, I think did we look at price discrimination? So we had looked at a single priced monopolist. So let's look at the condition, the profit maximizing conditions for a monopolist. We for all market structures, we have the short run and the long run period, and we saw that we realized that it doesn't have to do with attaching years to short run and long run, but rather the characteristics that the characteristics in those periods. For example, we saw that short run is basically a period which is characterized by features like no change in technology. And then we saw that in the long run, basically all factors are variable, they are changing. If it's land, if it's labor, it is changing, it is varying. If it is capital, it is changing. There is change in technology, and it is expected that in the long run, the farm would have expanded and grown. For example, it can open up branches elsewhere, probably in other regions in the country or even in other countries. So with the monopolist, we have the first condition of profit maximization, which is made at the point where for example, when we look at this particular graph or curve, the first condition for profit maximization for a monopolist will be that we shall have at this point X, right? Where the price will be equal to the average revenue, right? Where the price will be equal to the average revenue, that point X, and we shall have a corresponding output level QM and the corresponding price PM. And then we have the second profit maximizing condition for a monopolist in the short run, that the price will be greater than the short run average total cost. The price will be greater than the short run average total cost, right? So at that point, the monopolist will be making what we call abnormal profits or supernormal profits. And the supernormal profits or the abnormal profits are indicated or illustrated by that shaded rectangle over there that you see in gray. That shaded area for this rectangle over there, that will be the supernormal profit that are obtained by a monopolist. So of course, so someone probably would be asking that, why is that curve like that? If you can remember the concept of elasticity, where we saw that the concept of elasticity basically means responsiveness. Responsiveness, for example, when we say when we say elasticity of demand, It means the degree of responsiveness of quantity demanded of the commodity due to the changes in the factors that affect demand. We saw the different factors that affect demand. For example, we looked at price, we looked at tastes and preferences, we looked at quality of the product, we looked at seasonal factors. All those factors, they do affect the quantity of the product, quantity of any product or commodity. So elasticity, we are looking at what will be what will happen to the quantity demanded of the product if there are any factors that are affecting demand. For example, when we say price is one factor that affects demand, isn't it? So when we say price elasticity of demand, it means that literally it means that by definition, price elasticity of demand would be the degree of responsiveness of quantity demanded of a product due to the change in the price of that product or commodity. It could even be a service. So with the price elasticity of demand, it means that if, for example, the price of that good or service increases or reduces, what will happen to the quantity demanded? Are we getting? For example, if the price of the commodity or product or service increases, what will happen to the quantity demanded? Will it reduce? Will it increase? So basically, that's what we want to know. Are we together? So probably if you didn't understand the concept of elasticity, go back and revise. So you remember we looked at the measures of elasticity, isn't it? Where we saw, for example, when we draw this curve over there, who can tell me that measure of elasticity? Is it elastic? Is it inelastic? Is it unitary? What is it? If the demand curve is in that over that direction, for example, what is that? What measure of elasticity is that? People are not reading. So that is fairly inelastic demand curve. Are we together? Fairly inelastic demand curve. So when we say inelastic, in most economics textbooks, they are basically meaning fairly inelastic. When they say elastic, in most economic textbooks, they are basically referring to fairly elastic. Are we together? So a monopolist is characterized by the curve or the graph of a monopolist is characterized by a fairly inelastic demand curve over there, which we see as demand curve being equal to the average revenue. Are we together? Average revenue being, average is mean, whereby average revenue will be total revenue divided by the output sold. Isn't it? So the demand curve of a monopolist is also, it has a corresponding marginal revenue curve over here, right? That is the marginal revenue curve. This is the demand curve. Are we together? So what is marginal revenue? Anything marginal in economics is anything extra or is anything additional. So marginal revenue will be extra revenue incurred to produce an extra unit of output. So it will be, marginal revenue will be extra revenue and as a result of selling an extra unit of output. Are we together? So that's why that curve is that, and every farm has to incur costs. So this monopolist will definitely also have a marginal cost curve. So the marginal cost curve is this curve over there. And what is marginal cost? Marginal cost is extra cost incurred to produce an extra unit of output. And then we have average total cost curve over there. This one here. Average total cost will basically be the total cost divided by the output produced by a monopolist. So the profit, the abnormal profit will be the difference between the price and the cost, or the difference between the selling price and the cost price. Are we together? So that's why the monopolist, the graph of the monopolist is in that shape. And it is fairly inelastic. Remember, we saw that it is a condition whereby a big increase, a big change in the price of a product or service will lead to a small change in the quantity demanded. In other words, a monopolist is a price maker. Why? Because it's the only person, it is the only firm in the industry. Are we together? If you're the only person selling a good and there is no competitor, you are, and that good does not have a close substitute, you become a monopolist. Are we together? So because of that condition that there is no competitor, this person or this business does not have a competitor, and the good does not have a close substitute, it's a unique product or service, then it means this person or this business now gets that monotony, should I say. Mono means one, and poly comes from a Greek word means selling, one seller. We together. So a monopolist is a price maker because he has no competitor. So that's why the demand curve is fairly inelastic, meaning that a big change in the price will lead to a small change in the quantity demanded. When a monopolist increases the price of his product or her product by a big percentage, or a big proportion, there will be less reduction in the quantity demanded. Why? Because people or consumers do not have an alternative product to buy or a substitute product to resort to if this person has increased the price. Are we together? So I hope that is clear up to that level. We can continue. However, there is no, we also have the long run period of a monopolist. However, there is no guarantee that monopolist will earn supernormal profit. Are we together? Of course, it depends on the kind of product that you are selling. You may find that product, people, yes, you're a monopolist, but it's not a necessity. People look at it as not being a necessity. So the monopolist, there is a less difference between the short run period and the long run period of a monopolist. Are we together? And then the farm of a monopolist is the industry. You remember what we saw, what the difference between the farm and the industry? A farm is a single business entity, but industry is a collection of farms, isn't it? For example, when you say Airtel Uganda, it is one single business entity. But when you combine them, Airtel, MTN, and K2, all those, it becomes now an industry. So when you're talking about all those farms, you call it the telecommunication industry because it is a collection of those farms. Are we together? So the farm of a monopolist is the industry because it's the only farm there, and of course it will now becomes the industry. So it can happen that a monopolist may fail to make profit. Someone may ask me now, how? Why? For example, when we had the what do I call it? COVID. There are people that were claiming to do what? we have discovered the cure to the disease. Are we together? And if the pandemic was to continue and the medicine is working, they become, and they are patented. Are we together? Because we saw how we saw ways in which the formation of monopoly or monopolists. For example, we saw that one cause of the formation of monopolies is existence of economies of scale, right? And we saw economies of scale being advantages of large scale production, right? Whereby the large scale production will lead to advantages, like, for example, if this monopolist is this person producer, or the producer is buying, for example, raw materials in bulk, large quantities, they are prone to getting discounts than someone who is just buying one item, right? So those discounts lead to reduced costs of production, but when the output is also increasing because they are buying in bulk. Are we together? So as long as there is reduced cost and increased output, it leads to the existence of economies of scale. What we saw as a situation whereby we have increasing returns to scale. Increasing returns to scale means that the costs are reducing, but the output is increasing, which basically leads now to the existence of economies of scale. So we saw that these economies of scale, this farm can outcompete other farms that are working on small scale, and they may fail to compete favorably and exit the industry, and this farm remains alone. So as a result, now it becomes a natural monopoly. And we saw that natural monopoly arises as a result of existence of economies of scale. Then secondly, we saw that monopolies can arise as a result of the governments, right? The regulators, the government, it's called the government monopoly or a state monopoly. The government can create these monopolies by issuing what we call patent rights, right? So the patents are basically exclusive rights that are given to a seller or a producer to sell a product, to produce and sell a product, but when no other person is allowed to sell that product. So definitely that becomes a government or state monopoly. Are we together? Then also the government can issue out what we call franchise, which are also exclusive rights that are given to, for example, farms or a business to, for example, sell in an exclusive location. You could find that we have a canteen, yeah, a restaurant, but this restaurant is, for example, in a game park, and the government has given it exclusive rights to sell food to, for example, tourists. So definitely there it becomes a monopolist. Then we saw that also the barriers to entry. The barriers to entry, as long as there are barriers to entry and there is only one farm in the industry, that can also be factors that lead to existence of monopoly. For example, expensive initial cost, if it is costly to start up that kind of business, expensive initial cost or capital. If it is costly to start up the business, you could find that the equipment are costly. So that one will be an advantage, because it will limit the farms that want to start up, but as well as give an advantage of a competitive advantage, and of course keeping that business in the industry alone, and thereby becoming a monopolist. So for example, I was giving that example of this so-called, as it an industry or individual who are claiming to have discovered the COVID-19 cure. And what happened, of course, at the end of the day, there were, I should say, debates on the patenting, right? So it is possible to make laws in the long run or even in the short run. So what happened next? You find out what happened next. Of course, now, keeping other factors constant, I'm assuming that COVID-19 has either reduced or something. Are we together? So I don't think now those people that were claiming to have discovered the cure, and now we are able now to make any profits. So it is possible, depending on even the type of product you are selling. It could be when it's not a necessity. So people do not find it as a luxury, so they will not really spend on that product. So it is possible. So let's look at price discrimination. It occurs when a firm charges different prices to different consumers for the same product or for reasons other than differences in costs. So it is, we saw that there is a single priced monopolist and there is a price discriminating monopolist. So price discriminating monopolist can charge different prices for the same product. Is that possible? Yes. And it has happened to some of us in our ignorance. So the two conditions can apply, two conditions for this price discrimination to happen. There should be separate markets featuring demand curves with different price elasticities, right? So there should be two separate markets that have different price elasticities. One market should have an elastic demand, another market should have an inelastic demand. And by now, someone who has been attending all class or who has been following these sessions should be able to distinguish between inelastic demand and elastic demand. Anyone to remind us the difference between elastic demand and inelastic demand?
Yes.
Naomi, tell us.
Inelastic is responsiveness, elastic is non-responsiveness.
Pardon?
Inelastic. It's inelastic, it's non-responsiveness. Then elastic is responsiveness.
Yes, but now, can you give us like an example? When we say that the demand for a particular product is inelastic, what does it mean?
It means regardless.
Yes, Andrew.
It means that regardless of the prices going up of that particular commodity, the demand will remain, constant. It won't change. So, for example, soap, we know that everyone uses soap. So the mere fact that soap is increasing, people won't stop bathing, won't stop shower, or washing. So in that way, we can say that the demand is inelastic, because regardless of the prices going up, the demand still continues to be the same.
All right. The explanation is okay, but the example is not okay. When we say that, for example, the price elasticity of demand is inelastic, inelastic means, look at it like a rubber band. It's not stretching. Sorry, look at it as a thread. Compare a thread and a rubber band. A rubber band is elastic, but a thread is inelastic. Are we together? So if we are looking at price elasticity of demand being inelastic, it means that, for example, if the price is to increase by a high proportion, it has to be a high proportion, by a big proportion. The reaction in terms of the reduction, for example, if price increases by a bigger proportion, the reaction in terms of reduction in the quantity demanded will be very slight or very small. Are you getting? Andrew was explaining it in the perspective of a necessity, but I don't think so. Is soap a necessity? If you are not using soap, will you die? That one will not work. If it is food, food has inelastic demand. The price elasticity of demand for food is inelastic. Why? Because even if the price of food increases, people will not stop eating. They will continue to buy. Are you getting? They will not say because the price has increased or food has increased, let us reduce. I know others were told to reduce the amount of food, but I mean, at the end of the day, you have to eat. Look at what happened during the lockdown. People were shopping food seriously. These shops, those retail shops and wherever they were, increasing prices. You know, when there is an adversity, people use it as an advantage. Whenever there is a problem, other people use it as what? As an advantage. Are we getting? COVID was there, but now people are getting an advantage of hiking the price and doing all sorts of things in business. Are we getting? So regardless of whether, because we were in a what you call emergency, we saw the exceptions of the law of demand. Are we together? Because the law of demand looks at price as the only factor that affects demand. Are we together? That the higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded, and the lower the price, the higher the quantity demanded, but keeping other factors constant. And we saw that there are violations of that law, whereby price will not be a factor affecting price can be out of the equation, whereby it's not affecting the demand. Because during that period of the COVID pandemic, prices were hiking for some commodities like oranges, ginger, what else? Lemons. You know, in the names of because we were told that the medics were telling us that their vitamins, they increase the immunity. Are we together? So you had to boost your immunity to make sure that you don't contract the disease, or when you contract it, your body will have, your immune system will be strong enough to fight against the virus, the COVID-19 virus. Are we together? So at that time, price was not the factor, because the demand was just increasing. We saw expectations, future price expectations, whereby people were expecting even the prices of particular commodities to even increase, and so they were shopping and, you know, panic shopping and keeping in their houses. Are we together? But that was just an example. So I think we know now what inelastic demand means, right? Then we have elastic demand. Elastic means that a small change in the price of a commodity or service leads to a big change in the quantity demanded. So the change in the price could be a slight increase in the price of a commodity or product or service, leads to a big reduction in the quantity demanded. Are we together? But that one happens now for the other inelastic that we've looked at. It can happen in scenarios where the good is a necessity, number one. It can happen in scenarios where the good does not have a close substitute, like we are seeing it here under monopoly. Are we together? That because the monopolist has increased the price so high, the reaction in terms of reduction of the quantity demanded by the consumers will be very slight, because they do not have alternative or substitute good to resort to. And so they have to continue buying. Then elastic will happen in scenarios whereby we have, for example, substitutes. We have substitute goods. If the price of Omo increases, the price of slightly, you could find both of them were selling at 500 a sacket, but probably the price of Aerial increases by just 100 shillings. The price of Omo has remained at 500. What will happen? People, of course, keeping other factors constant, to buy more of that what detergent whose price looks cheap. Are we together? So I hope we know that concept. I don't want to overdelay on it. So another condition should be that, of course, now for these two markets, the elastic market and the inelastic market, the elastic market will be for the poor people or for the low income earners. The inelastic market will be for the high income earners. Are we together? For example, a monopolist can say that if, for example, I'm selling chicken, right? It is the same chicken, but one is sold in, so elasticity we've seen, elasticity, two different markets, one elastic, one another inelastic, and separate markets by classification of customer, geography, or time. It could even be that it can be that you're selling, this person is selling chicken, same chicken. One is sold in maybe what? Not Serena. It could be Game here. They sell some chicken there. Game, another one is sold in Katanga, but the same chicken. These are branches, same chicken, but different prices, of course, because of classification of people, of customers. Are we together? So someone will feel like, because I've bought it from Game or somewhere, ShopRite, it looks. Are we together? So even it can be time, in terms of time, right? Whereby, for example, if you look at, let's assume the telecommunication company we have only one in the country, we find that price discrimination could happen if it was monopoly, that during, for example, night hours, it is cheap to call than during day. Are we together? Then the markets must be separated so that the products cannot be resold. The markets must be separated so that the products cannot be resold. That is a condition for price discrimination to take place. But also there should be ignorance of the consumers, because just in case these consumers get to know that you are price discriminating, they will not buy. If they get to know that the chicken you are selling at Katanga and Game is the same, why would they, So there has to also be ignorance by the consumers. They should not know what is happening. So we have first degree, second degree, and third degree price discrimination. So first degree price discrimination occurs when a consumer is charged the maximum price that he or she is willing to pay, right? So first degree price discrimination, this monopolist is charging a high price, but now the condition is that the consumer is willing to pay that price. Then we have second degree price discrimination, involves charging consumers a different price for the amount or quantity consumed, right? Examples include a phone plan that charges a higher rate after a determined amount of minutes are used. Reward cards can provide frequent shoppers with a discount on, for example, we've seen that example, second degree price discrimination, whereby the timing, the price discrimination can be in terms of what? of the timing. Are we together? So that is second degree price discrimination. Then we have third degree price discrimination occurs when a firm separates consumers into small number of classes and establishes a different price for each class. So for example, you could find, you've seen some products whereby they put premium and what? They like you see sausages. I've seen it on sausages. They put premium, then they put what? Yeah, that kind of thing. So it is the same product, but you know, there is the way, there is some kind of class one, someone will feel when they say about premium. It can even be in terms of packaging. Are we together? But it is the same product. So that one will be a third degree price discrimination. All right. We looked at how to calculate those ones in the previous class. So we see that the curve of a monopolist will not change. It will not change. It will remain the same way we've seen it. Someone is saying Cafe Javas and Chiponi. Yes. So you find they are selling, but Cafe Javas I cannot. Yes, if it is the same seller, and you know you cannot. I mean, the pricing has to be different, but that one for the same product, and that one will definitely be price discrimination. So let's look at perfect competition and single price monopolist compared. Perfect competition and single price monopoly compared. So we are going to compare the equilibriums. So of course, when we are comparing monopoly and the perfect competition, we know that perfect competition is characterized by many sellers of a product which is homogeneous or which is the same, isn't it? Whereas monopoly, it is a single seller of a product that does not have a close substitute. So definitely output under perfect competition is more than output produced under perfect competition is more than output produced for a monopolist. And then also in terms of price, the price under monopoly is higher than that under perfect competition. And also in terms of efficiency, perfect competition attains efficiency. Now, what do we mean by efficiency? Efficiency means operating at an equilibrium, right? Efficiency means operating at an equilibrium whereby we don't have excess or shortage, right? And also what we call allocative efficiency will mean that consumers get satisfaction for the goods they are willing to pay for. Consumers get satisfaction for the goods they are willing to pay for. So we are going to realize that all markets that apart from perfect competition, which attains allocative efficiency, a situation whereby it is operating at an equilibrium, no profit or no excess, no shortage, and that consumers are getting satisfaction for the goods they are willing to pay for. That one will only happen under perfect competition and not any other market structures. In other words, the other market structures apart from perfect competition are called imperfect market structures. Perfect competition, imperfect. Are you getting? Why are they imperfect market structures? Because they do not attain allocative efficiency. And what is allocative efficiency? Allocative efficiency means that consumers are getting satisfaction for the goods they are willing to pay for. Or in other words, there is no excess, there is no shortage. So monopoly does not attain allocative efficiency. So that's how briefly we can explain that graph there, where we are comparing monopoly and perfect competition. So for example, in this graph or curve here, we are seeing that perfect competition is that there, an equilibrium is attained over there, right? Isn't it? And with the perfect competition, it will have a corresponding output Q2 here, isn't it? And with monopoly, we are now looking at this here, that equilibrium over there, and the corresponding output Q1. And now we know that monopoly is charging that a perfect competition is having greater output produced than monopoly. Because perfect competition is Q2, monopoly it is Q1. All together. And then monopoly, you will see that it's charging price P1, but perfect competition is charging the corresponding output of Q2, sorry, the corresponding price P2 with output Q2, which is P2. So when it comes to pricing, monopoly is having a higher price than the product sold under perfect competition. And in terms of output, perfect competition is having greater output produced than under monopoly, because monopoly is just a single seller, but perfect competition, there are many sellers. So definitely output has to be greater. Output produced under perfect competition has to be greater than output produced under monopoly. Now let's look at consumer surplus. Consumer surplus. So consumer surplus will be the difference between what the buyer is willing to pay, what the consumer is a buyer, isn't it? What the consumer or the buyer is willing to pay and what they actually pay. For example, if you go in a shop and you are buying something, right? Probably you're buying a phone, but you are willing to pay 200,000 for a smartphone. But at the end of the day, when you go, you ask the price and they will tell you, probably you've moved with 200,000 thinking it will be there, at least the acceptable price. So when you reach there, they will tell you this phone is 190. So the difference between what you are willing to pay and what you actually pay will be the consumer surplus. In Uganda, you call it what? Njau. The difference. So you would have, are you getting? So that is consumer surplus. So it will be, it will also be the area below the demand curve and above the market price, like we are going to see. Then producer surplus happens to the sellers or the producers, will be the amount, the difference between what the seller or the producer is willing to accept and what they finally receive for the goods sold. Are we together? So for example, you, when you're selling something, you want to sell it at, for example, if it's a phone, you want to sell it at 200,000 Uganda shillings, for example. But when the person comes and they seem to be probably rich, or they don't mind about bargaining, or they're ignorant, they will ask you the price and you tell them 250. But you know that even if you charge 200,000, you still get profit. So you tell them 250 and they just pay the money. So that difference between what you are willing to receive and as a seller and what you actually receive from will be the producer surplus. So it happens so graphically, this is how consumer surplus, that light blue triangle over there, triangular area over there is the consumer surplus, and then below that purple triangle over there represents producer surplus. So the total of, or the total, the triangle, what I would call, if for example, I think it is definite there. If we call, for example, this one F, this point we call it F, then AEF is the consumer surplus, then CEF is the producer surplus, but AEC is the economic welfare. I'm glad very many people are joining the class.
Please be patient. Madam, don't we?
So we've seen what consumer surplus is and what producer surplus is. So under monopoly, if we are looking at this particular curve here, that triangle over there, which is B, which is BCE, that one over there represents the, what you call dead weight loss, the dead weight loss. And what is the dead weight loss? The dead weight loss is cost, what should I say, the inefficiency caused by the monopolist. Octavia is asking what causes that? What causes what? What causes what? What causes the dead weight loss? So the dead weight loss is, of course, with the monopolist, there is exploitation. We are going to realize that with the monopolists, there is literally exploitation in a way that, since they don't have, a monopolist does not have any competitor, they are going to be price makers. Are we together? To the extent that even if they increase the price by a high proportion, people, the reaction in terms of reduction of quantity consumed or purchased will be very slight. People do not have an alternative product. Look at, for example, the electricity distribution in Uganda here, how it was when the government was still in charge. What was happening? Oh, we are not yet born that time, but it was terrible. Are we together? People literally had to have a timetable or schedule when we are going to have electricity and when we shall not have. Are we together? Power outrages. And for them, they have no loss. They are not remorseful, or they do not even regret for any inconveniences caused. Just assume you're going to have class, you're going to, there is some important, you're going for an operation, and this operation needs electricity, but someone will lose their life because there is electricity is not on, or someone is in the operation theater, electricity goes off. What happens next? So those inconveniences, are we together? The dead weight loss. So we are going to realize that monopolists, or a monopolist, there is that inefficiency in terms of high prices charged, low output produced, then also the quality of the product will not be, the product or service will not be the best. So that time we are looking at an example of electricity. The electricity distribution was not the best. Just imagine, that on Monday electricity will be there, Tuesday it will not be there. It's not, and the monopolist, a monopolist is just makes informative advertisement. Are we getting? When there is competition, people will make advertisements. But a monopolist does not just makes informative what? Advertisement. That, for example, if it is electricity distribution, it's only one supplier, like how it was previously here in Uganda. If it's a state monopoly in terms of distribution of electricity, they will just tell you on such and such a day we shall not be having electricity. Because our engineers are working and ABCD, we regret for any inconvenience caused, but they are actually not regretting. They are just making an informative advertisement. Are you getting? Just like even with the national water here, it's still, of course, now what happened, we are going to see that with the electricity distribution, we had privatization, whereby it is now distributed into different, UETCL, UEDCL, Umeme. Are you getting? And now there is efficiency. Are you understanding what we mean by efficiency? Efficiency in terms of delivery, yes, service delivery. You see that we no longer have power outrages, and if the electricity goes off, it will not take days or even a day, right? So because of that, we are going to see that the inconvenience caused by existence of monopolists or a monopoly is what you call the dead weight loss. So I hope the loss, it will basically be a dead weight loss to society, inconvenience caused by monopolists.
So Farida, you are the only one. Why?
So let us look at monopolistic competition. We finished with the monopoly, right? We finished monopoly. And probably important for us to know is that that the governments can come in to regulate the monopoly, right? Monopolists. Are we together? So how does the government come in? The government will, how is monopoly regulated? How is monopoly dealt with? It is dealt with by ensuring that we encourage competition, isn't it? We encourage competition. Number one, by what we call regulation. Monopolies are dealt with by regulation, whereby the rules will be the government will put regulation in terms of, for example, if it is the government will put what we call antitrust laws. You've heard of antitrust laws? Antitrust laws. For example, those antitrust laws can be like laws against merging. You realize that if we have, for example, more than one firm, if, for example, we have 3 firms, maybe in the telecommunication company, they can join, they can merge, and they become one company, which will then become a monopolist. So the government can put laws. The laws can be not allowing mergers. So that is one way of regulating monopoly, avoiding the formation of what? Monopoly. It can be that laws against formation of cartels, right? We are going to see that cartels, for example, they happen under oligopoly, whereby farms join and they form they agree and they control the pricing and the output. For example, OPEC is a cartel, and in its being a cartel, it controls oil production. You are getting, because these oil producing countries, they agree, they work together to control the output, the amount of oil, and the pricing. Are you getting? But they can as well even join and they become, yes, they are operating as one, but also there is a way it limits. There is a way it brings in efficiency in terms of supply of a product or service, right? So government can work against those laws. The government can put regulations against collision, what you call collusion. Collusion happens under oligopoly, but we shall see what is the meaning of collusion. Predatory pricing happens under oligopoly, whereby these firms, the few firms under oligopoly, can strategically increase the price, can strategically reduce the prices below the average total cost, just to prevent or to hinder the firms that want to join the industry, to hinder them from entering. Because if you want to join the industry, you will see that these firms are charging prices below the average total cost. They are not making any profit, but for them, they are making it as a strategy to prevent you from joining the industry. And when they feel that they have really hindered the new firms that want to join the industry, in the long run, they will now increase and make substantial profits. That is predatory pricing. So the government can work again, can put laws to ban all that kind of behavior, illegal behavior. Are we together? That is regulation. Then another way governments can deal with monopoly is through deregulation. The first one was regulation laws, antitrust laws. The second one is deregulation. What does deregulation mean? Deregulation means that, for example, if we've been having a state monopoly, the government is now reducing the powers it has been having and liberalizing or privatizing. like how it happened with electricity distribution, that initially it was a monopoly, UEB, and Electricity Board. But with the deregulation, the government is reducing the authority it's been having, or the control it has been having, and it can privatize to other individuals, or even sell shares in that company, such that there is efficiency at the end and the competition at the end of the day, like it's happening here with electricity distribution. So let's go to monopolistic competition. So when you hear competition, definitely there has to be a large number of sellers or a large number of firms, right? And there is freedom competition, there is freedom of entry and exit, just like it is in perfect competition. Freedom of entry and exit. You are free to join the industry if you want to make business. You are free to leave if you feel you are not making profits. And these large firms are producing what we call differentiated products. Differentiated products, what you can say similar but not identical. So under monopolistic competition, it is characterized by large number of sellers or large number of firms. These firms are selling differentiated products, or what you call similar but not identical, or what you call close but not a perfect substitutes. A good example here can be the television stations, right? Whereby there are many, isn't it? Freedom, if you want to, but freedom of entry, I don't know how much it costs to start up a TV, but it is cheaper because of competition. And then the differentiated service, whereby you see these people are just duplicating what? Programs. You find here it's called Agatari Konfufu, the other is called Amasenge, the other is called what? Amauli, you know, Agocha, but it's all local news. So they're just differentiated products or services, or the close but not similar but not identical, or close but not perfect substitutes. So firms can have some degree of market power brought about by brands of the products, and they can earn. There is a possibility of supernormal profits being earned under. Of course, like for example, if you are to look at TV, look at NTV, I don't know what's happening to it right now, but if you are to look at the TV stations, the brands matter. Why you take your advert or your announcement matters, isn't it? So the brands will matter. Are we together? So the differentiation in the products and the brands bring about some degree of power over control of prices, and leads to profits as a possibility of supernormal profits being earned. So the demand curve of monopolistic competition is downward sloping, but more elastic or more flatter than the demand curve. The demand curve of monopolistic competition is downward sloping, but more elastic or more flatter than that of a monopolist. What do we mean? What we mean here is that the graph, or the curve, the graph for a monopolistic competition is the same as the one of what? Of monopoly. But what is the difference? The distinct difference will only be that the one of monopolistic if the one of monopoly is inelastic. Fairly what? Inelastic, it's sharp, like that. Such that inelastic, Fairly inelastic, you draw it in a way that a big change in the price will lead to a small change. Are you getting? The big change could be an increase or a decrease in the price. And the small change can be still a decrease or an increase in the price. Such that when we say, this is monopoly now, isn't it? It has a fairly inelastic, what you can simply say inelastic demand curve. Are we together? Such that a big change, for example, if it's a big increase in the price, will lead to a slight reduction in the quantity demanded because the people do not have close substitutes to switch to. Then monopolistic competition, it will be more flatter. It will be more flatter, more elastic means more flatter. Are we getting? More flatter, more elastic. And more elastic means that what? That a small change in price leads to what? A big change. Because there is competition. As long as there is competition for you, when for example, all of them are selling a kilo of sugar, look at retail shops if there are many. If all of them, retail shops are typical of perfect competition, isn't it? Retail shops, they are typical of perfect competition. There are many, they are all selling the same things, the sugar, whatever, push, whatever, you know, and they're all selling the same price. If it's a kilo of sugar, they're all selling the same price. So for me, if I'm in a retail shop and the kilo of sugar is 3,000, I think 500 by now, and for me, I sell 3,450. No, 3,000. I have to mute some of you. So we are winding up. If the kilo of sugar by all retail shops is sold at 3,500, and for me, I reduced to 3,400, what do you think is going to happen? Definitely under normal circumstances, buyers are going to shift to my shop and buy. But the reduction was just slight by 100 shillings, which has led to great increase in the quantity demanded of my sugar. Are you getting? So that's what we mean by elastic demand. That a slight reduction in the price of that kilo of sugar by just 100 shillings is leading to a great increase in the quantity demanded. Are we getting? Because there is competition. So the only distinct difference between monopoly and the monopolistic competition is about the elasticity of demand. It is simply about the elasticity of demand. That whereas the monopoly will be characterized by a fairly inelastic demand curve, monopolistic competition will have a more flatter or a more elastic demand curve, because of course there are more. This one is having many sellers. Monopoly is just one seller. So of course the competition brings about the elasticity, the demand curve to be more elastic than that of monopoly. So that will just be the distinct difference between those two market structures. So let us stop our class here.
Farida.